So there are lots of ways in which AI is helping to move businesses, move organizations forward. I mentioned yesterday the 3 Ps that someone told me a few days ago. AI helping with product, helping with process, and helping with productivity within organizations, which I thought was quite useful. I think it's a bit more widespread than that, and that's what we're going to be talking about right now. So as we look at the prompt economy, or how Gen AI rewrites business models, please join me in welcoming to the stage Senior Director of Engineering for AI Research Strategy at Google, Pilar Manchon, and our moderator for this session, Ashin Lunny.
Gracias, David. Bon dia, buenos dias a todo. Thank you so much for joining us here. Yes, we are about to open a can of digital worms. Agentic AI, AI agents is all over the news, but do AI agents actually speak business? We are about to find out from your good self, Pilar. So in time-honored tradition, I think it'd be wonderful if you could introduce yourself to our wonderful audience at 4 years from now.
Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you so much. I'm Pilar Manchon. I work for Google Research, and I work on engineering, research, and strategy. And these days, I'm focusing my efforts on human value alignment, which has to do with teaching the large language models to basically let us know what the values embedded in them are, be transparent about that, and have some level of control so that we know how decisions are being made and answers are being built.
Excellent. Well, I'm so glad that you and your team are doing exactly this. But just so we're all on the same page here, would you mind giving us a definition or explaining exactly what an AI agent or agentic AI means in 2025?
Well, there are many versions of what a definition of an agent is. So I would encourage everyone to actually see the publication by the World Economic Forum where I participated, where we actually do a taxonomy of different kinds of agents in a definition. But just to basically give a short definition of that, an agent is an entity, an artificial entity that is able to perform tasks for you on your behalf and you can communicate with. I think that would be a very simple definition of it.
Excellent. And as you speak about this, I'm reminded of a certain dancing paperclip back in the day. Now, we've come a long way from dancing paperclips, there's no doubt. How do you feel that, AI systems and AI agents are evolving from these simple assistants to actual decision-making systems?
Well, the technology, the philosophy, the infrastructure, the goal, everything has changed so dramatically in the last few years. Back then, when we had different types of AI, the goal was to create tasks and create these seemingly agents that could actually perform some of those tasks in a very sort of constrained way. Communication was also an issue. Like many of the people that are now working on AI used to work on natural language understanding and natural language processing with entirely different techniques and so on. And now with generative AI and the new large language models and the types of implementations that we have an entirely different new set of problems. Before it was about doing what you are programming this thing to do, but the communication was a challenge. So it was about making them more flexible, more human-like, more natural, more understanding. And now it's like they're too human a little bit for some people's taste. And it's about making sure that they do what you want them to do and not lie about it or not say anything that is not completely true.
Indeed, indeed. So I'd love to get your thoughts on Google Gemini, because obviously it's a product that you know intimately. How does Google Gemini differentiate from these previous models? And talk to us a bit about the evolution of Google Gemini compared to what you've just spoken about.
So Gemini is a family of models. So it's not just one model. There are multiple models that have been designed for different purposes. So as we explore this fantastic world of large language models, We need models that are a little bit smaller in size, but very precise in certain areas. We need models that are able to reason. We need models that are bigger and probably more comprehensive in terms of the kind of questions or answers that they can provide. We need models that are specialized, like for instance, Gemini, that has been trained on more than 40 million medicine-related or health-related papers, and that gives you answers that are more specialized about medicine. So it depends on what you want to do, the kind of performance that you require, and what your priorities are, because size might be a critical aspect of that. But I would encourage everybody to explore the full family of Gemini models, and also the open source ones. We have the Gemma models that you can use on your own. Some of them are smaller in size as well, so it gives a great deal of flexibility, and you can even utilize different versions of data commons in order to combine that with Gemma to prevent hallucinations.
Excellent. Glad to hear it again. Talk to us a bit about some of the breakthroughs in areas like multimodal AI, real-time processing, enterprise applications, because there's a lot going on.
So that would be summarize everything that's happening in the world right now. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We have time.
Happy to. I'm personally very excited about the multimodality aspect of the new models. I've been working in the world of AI for decades now. I don't want to age myself, but that's true. And back in the day when we had more limited approaches, we had to develop unimodal applications. So it was either speech or text or vision or something else. And now we can actually combine them all so that the context is shared. And it's a lot closer to the way we understand the world as multimodal agents or species.
Yes.
Because we process the information. Like when you're seeing me, it's not only what I'm saying, you see my lips moving, you see my body language, you're getting that I'm Spanish and that's why I move so much, it's part of it.
Muy bien.
So this multimodal aspect is amazing because it's a lot closer to what we seek when we're in pursuit of general intelligence,
Yeah.
right? And then applications in the real world combined with the multimodality are also better because we understand the context better. So about efficiency, productivity, use cases, it's all maturing at a speed that is really exciting.
Excellent. And this kind of brings us nicely on to the potential of AI agents in business. So I'd love to put you on the spot now. How far would you say that we are from fully autonomous AI agents handling workflows, handling analysis, and handling transactions?
Well, I would say that right now, that's not necessarily the goal.
Okay.
So what we're looking to do is to empower humans to do better jobs. So it's more about what you can do, how much more you can do, how much better the quality of your work can be. And whether that takes you to an entirely new level of capabilities or opens up a new level of opportunities. I'm particularly excited by the possibility of having different types of education and training and coaching. So I am very curious by nature, and the possibility of basically open anything to me, adapted to me, customized to my needs, to my time, to my level of expertise, to my goal. I think that opens a whole range of possibilities for people in corporates, so people who are just trying to grow professionally, but even so, at a personal growth kind of level, because you might want to learn a language just because it's cool, or because you like that kind of the movies that they make. I don't know. I'm thinking about French. I don't speak French, but I love to. So maybe I can learn French at my own speed, or learn how to speak in public, or dance, or something like that. I think we live in exciting times.
Absolutely. Maybe we can do this session next year in French, if you like. That would be très bien.
We can give it a go.
But talk to us a bit about the benefits for business. What are some of the industries that you think could benefit the most from AI agents?
I think that we can think the other way around. It would be easier to find what industry is it not going to benefit, right? I think that right now AI is basically going to have an impact on pretty much anything that you can think of. It's hard for me to think in areas where the impact is not going to be massive, either directly or indirectly. And you might wonder, what are those areas where you don't see AI having as much of an impact? And they're very important areas for us. Like, I'm thinking more like people that come to your house and help you with the plumbing or the electricity or things like that, very basic things that require high skills, but AI is not going to be helping you that much there. Leaving that aside, or gardening, that's another one. Leaving that aside, I think that any business can actually disrupt itself, not only in terms of how to be more efficient, how to be more productive, and so on, which is the basics, is like the least that you can do. Is thinking about, how would I change this business if I started it now? If I had to build this business from scratch, how would I disrupt it? Would I have the same business model? Would I have the same competitors? Am I shifting and changing the kind of market or the people that I'm addressing my product and services to? Who are my real competitors in this new world? And that is changing and shifting so much. You can have agents that actually do the work for you, that analyze your market, that help you be in the right position in order to have an advantage with your competition. So I would just encourage everyone to think more about, if you had an agent that can learn about anything, and it can work for you hand in hand, what would you have it do? And then multiply that agent by 10. It's like, well, now you can have a multiple agents that actually work on your behalf in a particular direction, disrupting what used to be your business to create yet another layer. I think that's the most exciting part of it.
Wow, absolutely. I mean, this is a very bright future, very exciting, a lot of potential, but there are challenges as well. I mean, I'm thinking about things like accuracy, bias, ethical concerns, adoption risks. You know, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges, or how would you frame the challenges for our audience here?
Well, I think that you mentioned some of the more important ones, but it would be important to think about, what is it that we want to get out of AI? I think that one of the challenges that is not normally mentioned is, where are we going with this? Because sometimes you just build technology for the sake of technology, and you see the potential for the next step, or maybe even a few steps forward. But we're in such a transformational shift that the way that I think we need to think about this is about an opportunity to change our society. I like to say that the way we're building technology now, and with the data and the bias that's coming out of the data, is providing us almost like a mirror, where we're looking at ourselves. And we're looking at the things that we don't do right. It's like we're realizing now that we have all these embedded biases and these things that have a lot of potential for improvement. So why not take this opportunity to use AI to help us be better as a society, as human beings, as individuals, happier? How do we get there? What are the steps to get there? Because we talk about productivity, we talk about efficiency, and those are important things, don't get me wrong. But if you think further down the line, if you think about what kind of society do we want to build, what do we have to do now in order to achieve a future that's a little better than this one? And what answers can we get? And when you think about this, it's not necessarily just in science. It's in the humanities, it's in anthropology, it's in sociology, it's in psychology, it's in understanding who we are as humans, where do we want to go, and how AI can get us there, and then work all the way back.
Absolutely. You know, with this much potential for change and transformation, it's so important for very senior people like your good self to be asking those right questions to make sure we're going in the right direction. So thank you for that. That's wonderful. But let's kind of move on to the future for AI-driven productivity. And this, again, it's a huge area of potential. Do you think that AI agents will actually move from automation assistants to independent economic actors at some stage?
I think that at some point we can foresee an evolution where they take more and more independent actions and decision making, because it's all about trust and delegation. Yeah. So if we are able to build agents that perform not only at a level that we're satisfied with, but at a level that we can actually delegate some of our own decisions to them, then you can let them be on your behalf. But in order to achieve that, you have to trust them. And how do you trust them? You cannot build that relationship over time, right? If what you're trying to do is basically get something that has very high performance, very reliably, consistently over and over, then it just, it's almost automatic. You just trust this thing to do these things for you. But when it comes to subjective decision making, you really have to build that trust so that it understands your needs and your preferences. And that translates both in the professional world, what do I need my company to do, or what does it need to happen within my company? But it also translates to the user world, where what do my users need? How can I make them trust my services, my agents, my business? And I think that there is a really nice flywheel there that helps us understand better what our own needs are, what our needs as users are, and how we can actually cater for those needs with these very proficient agents.
Indeed, trust is the new oil. Again and again, we hear it on the stage at 4 years from now. So how do you think that businesses need to adapt to a future where AI can make complex decisions and execute them with a single prompt? What advice would you have?
I think that one of the most important things is understand really well what's happening. And that doesn't really mean that you have to understand the mathematical models and how the algorithm works. You need to understand what goes in and what goes out, with the quality of it, what metrics matter to you. And we have to be really innovative about the metrics, because sometimes we get default metrics in terms of the general performance of certain agents in general areas. But when you want an agent that works for you, for your needs, for your context, for your specific needs, maybe even with your data, then the metrics might need to be different. You might have to develop your own way of analyzing the performance of these new entities that are working for you. So we need to be ready to educate ourselves. And we need to be innovative, like think about not how to get a little bit farther, but how to kind of break it completely and disrupt yourself. Be bold. It's like at Google, we are basically betting on a future that is bold and responsible, but also together with everyone. Because like I said before, one of the most important things is to understand where we want to go as a society and have all the voices to have a say in where we're going. But you can't really have a say in where we're going if you don't really understand what you're saying, right? So it's about education. And how can you educate yourself if you don't take responsibility and accountability for that? Even if we put all the tools out there, which we have a plethora of different tools and courses and so on, we individually and as companies and as social agents, we have to take responsibilities and educate ourselves, educate our circle, and then dream about what can we do with these amazing technologies that are at our disposal.
Phenomenal. Okay, and that's kind of like the blue sky view. It's looking into the future, really cool stuff. But in terms of the nuts and bolts, let's get kind of down to basics here. What do you think? Because I'm sure there's a lot of businesses in the audience that are thinking, well, this is a future where AI agents are going to be, driving core business functions. Do you have any advice for folks looking to take practical, immediate steps to adapt and prepare for this world?
I think that depending on what industry you're working on, there are different offerings. But the most important thing is who you partner with.
Yes. Yes.
Of course, I'm going to advocate for Google. But why is this important? It's important because you need a partner that is not going to offer you the latest of the latest, but also the possibility of making your own decisions. An infrastructure that allows you to decide, now I have this model, now there is a new model that is better for me, and I have the flexibility to choose. So you're not stuck with a particular type of technology. And that's why if I put my entrepreneurial hat on, that's what I would do now. I would choose that kind of architecture, which is the Vertex architecture that Google's announced you to do, because if you like the Google models, the Geminis and the Gemmas and so on, that's fantastic, great. But if there are other more specialized models for your field, for your industry, or your own, then you want to have the possibility to switch, and you don't want to have to change everything that you do. So at the very least, get ready, get a good partner, get the infrastructure ready, and have a plan, have a strategy, because it's much better to have a strategy even if it's the wrong one, because at some point you'll realize it's the wrong one. That not having one and not making decisions and just becoming obsolete in a very slow and painful way.
Wow, wow, fantastic, sobering words right there. But yeah, the future's bright, but you need to kind of have the right sunglasses on to, again, use a metaphor. But if folks want to reach out, if folks want to try out the Google technology, I mean, obviously they can Google it, but you know, is there anywhere in particular that you would recommend they go and they check things out?
Well, we have in the Mobile World Congress, so you know you have in Hall 2.
Okay, Hall 2, my friends.
Google Cloud, and you have Android, and if not, Google it, and I'm sure you'll find your way.
Okay, fantastic. There you go. My dear friends, please show your appreciation for Pilar Manchon. Thank you. Amazing. So we are going to execute a prompt right now. We're going to do a little prompt stage changeover. So Pilar, could I ask you to move to this chair? And I'm going to walk over here so you won't see anything that's happening over there. It's a bit of stagecraft going on. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us all. This is just a little reminder to make the most of the networking opportunities at 4 years from now. We've got special networking areas. We've got cervezas after work, which is very important. It's thirsty work doing all this conference stuff, right? So we encourage you to make the most of the networking opportunities and also make the most of the digital networking opportunities by sharing the love on social media. Just make sure that you tag all of our amazing speakers and share nice photographs with muchos filtros para mí. Por favor, gracias. And you know, share it online, on LinkedIn, on any of the social media channels. Just use the hashtag 4YFN25 so the nice people at 4 years from now can find you and also amplify and make all your friends jealous. You know, let's create a bit of FOMO out there. You know, after all, you're here and they're not, so let's make some FOMO. Brilliant. Okay, we have a completely new stage. We have a rock star guest already, and we are going to move on to our next wonderful panel. So we've just heard the perspective from Google, who are doing such incredible work around agentic AI, around technology, full stop. You know, there's not many companies that become a verb, and of course, you know, you are you know, one of the leading first ones and the biggest ones. But like, what does this mean for business? We're going to find out right now. We're going to invite 2 more experts onto the stage to talk about prompting new business models to life. It's incredibly exciting. And I think you need to be in this one. Oh, no, you need to be in that one. OK. We are improvising up here. It's all good. Todo bien. OK, thank you, Pilar. Gracias. Muy bien. Right, so we have Pilar Manchon already on the stage, who is a Senior Director of Engineering for AI Research Strategy at Google. And we are now going to invite 2 more amazing speakers onto the stage. So let me tell you who they are, and then we'll bring them onto the stage, plus Pilar, and we'll get a huge big round of applause for them, okay? Muy bien. So we are delighted to be joined by partner at K-Fund, Miguel Arias, and by the co-founder and CEO at C10 Labs, Shahid Azim. My dear friends, please welcome to the stage Miguel, Shahid, and Pilar. Thank you. Well, bienvenidos, amigos. Great to see you all here. Thank you for joining us. Okay, we hope you enjoyed that kind of the warm-up discussion with Pilar, the fireside chat. The fireside is nice and warm here. So now we're going to dive into this idea of prompting business models to life. But before we dive in, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself to the crowd, to our wonderful delegates at 4 years from now, starting with your good self, Miguel.
Wonderful. Good morning, everybody. I don't know if you and Pilar left anything for us to talk about. It was amazing, so I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm Miguel Arias. I'm general partner at K-Fund. K-Fund is a venture capital firm here in Spain. We invest mostly in enabling technologies, so AI as a platform, data as a platform, IoT as a platform from very early stage up to Series B. So we have around 650 million under management, and we invest mostly in Spain, but also in Southern Europe and Latin America.
Fantastic. Okay, and Pilar, I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself again, just because I saw a lot of people coming in. So.
Well, I'm the same Pilar as before. I'm a Senior Director of Research Strategy and Engineering at Google Research, and I currently live in California and work on human value alignment, factuality, and other areas related to large language models and generative AI.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Pilar. And Shahid, your good self.
So my name is Shahid Azim. I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've spun out a number of companies based on academic work out of MIT. I lead a company called C10 Labs. We're an AI venture fund and a studio based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we invest in pre-seed, seed stage. We're in the process of closing our first $100 million fund. And the idea is that we're investing in first money into big transformative ideas.
Awesome. Okay, you can tell we have a power trio on the stage for you right now. I'm very glad to be here. So let's talk about the economics of AI-driven workflows. You know, what does generative AI mean in terms of shifting value creation in businesses, and what does this mean for monetization? You know, how is Gen AI going to affect the bottom line? Who wants to jump in? Open question.
Well, I'm happy to go first. So I think we're in a fundamentally like an inflection point in terms of what's possible with AI today. We've seen adoption at an exponential sort of a rate over the last 3 years across sectors that have historically been fairly slow to adopt. So I was at a conference recently in healthcare, and I asked the audience how many people are using, and these are all physicians, how many people are using AI on a daily basis? Every hand in the room went up. Only 2 years ago, it was about 1/3 of the room were using any kind of AI on a day in, day out basis. So I think there's a massive inflection point in terms of usability, access, and what you can actually do on a day in, day out basis. So certainly you can think of operational efficiencies. Companies are getting very, very excited about revenue potential as well, so completely new revenue opportunities. But what I do feel like startups have a significant opportunity here, because you can think of building products that are AI first or AI native. Just like we went from web to mobile first, completely radically new infrastructure, radically new user experiences. We're now at a moment where we're going to build fundamentally new infrastructure and experiences. And you can move faster, you can create these magical experiences for consumers and deliver a lot of value. So it's becoming very real.
Yeah, well said. I was actually at a talk yesterday at 4 years from now, and a lady from Nokia spoke about installing AI, baking it into the base stations, and what this means for handsets. Could the base stations do a lot of the work? It's really kind of, you know, redefining so many industries. Would anyone else like to jump in on that question of economics, and what does Gen AI do in terms of monetization and actually shifting where the value is created?
I think piggybacking on what I just said, I think that we've seen this paradigm shift, right? I mean, from the last 20 years, we have been having software as a service where software was bundling a lot of workflows, data interfaces to help tasks to be done somehow by somebody, right? And now we're moving to this work as a service paradigm where you can have an agent and AI do it all as the most talented worker of your organization. So you can have then maybe like consultants as AI or McKinsey as AI. You might have, God forbid, venture capital as AI at some point, right? I mean, that you can have these very, very skilled co-workers that then change the whole dynamics, because you're not anymore paying for a license fee for the software and seeing how somebody can use it to get an output. You can now get the output directly from the prompt. At some point, you're going to start charging for the outputs and not for the usage of the software. And that's going to change completely how you build and how you create value out of the software.
Absolutely. I love that image of a VC AI. It's just AI, but wearing a vest, you know?
Get an OpenAI wrapper.
Nice. I love it. Okay. And Pilar, what say you in terms of the value creation with Gen AI?
I think that you know, like both of them have said before, we're at a verge now where everything is shifting and changing. And just to add up and build on top of what they have said, I think that one of the most important things is to build your own story, to try to understand what's the edge that you have, how can you monetize with the information and the knowledge and the skill set that you have, how can you make it even more special? Because this is, I see it as a multiplier, as something that boosts something else, but you have to have something else to boost, right? So what is it that it's your essence, the essence to your business model, your differentiation in the market, and how can you use AI to boost that, multiply it, and make it even more so?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and I would say the unit economics for AI-first products and AI-first startups are fundamentally different. They can be 10x, they're not 10x, they're like 100x or 1000x in terms of process improvements and the kinds of things that they can do. I think this is where, you know, having some legacy or being an incumbent is a little bit of a challenge. And you know, there's a little bit of friction there. So I feel like if you're building today with startups, you have, or AI, you have an incredible opportunity to build massive companies and move fast.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, this opens up such a new paradigm of business, if you like. You've all been speaking about it there. So, in a way, we've been living in the world of SaaS. But Miguel, I'd like to come to your good self. What do you think that AI as a dynamic service could mean in terms of business model, in terms of, you know, how people use AI and what the financial models behind them could be?
There is all this conversation around SaaS being dead, right? And I think it's not going to happen that quickly. I think it's going to be a stage approach, but change is coming, that's for sure. So I think at the first going to see that, like a bit the SaaS companies really improving by the usage of copilots. A copilot for everything, an AI copilot for everything, like the one we see now in many of the incumbents, in Adobe and many others, right? So copilots are going to bring more revenues to the existing SaaS companies, and they might feel they're safe for the first 2 years, right? But then you're going to have a second stage, which is going to happen almost in parallel and boom in 2 years from now, which could be an agentic invasion, right? Where probably you're going to have lots of agents replicating the work of the human beings as the OpenAI operator, yeah? And using the software, but as an agent, not as a person. And then you're going to have a third stage, which is probably software invisibility, where agents talk to agents and use APIs, and they don't need the interfaces anymore. And at that point is when software as a service as we know it is really going to have to change, because you will need to be opening all your APIs, opening your data for agents, for autonomous agents to talk to other agents and not to people. And that's going to be a big shift.
Amazing. And do we think the pricing models are going to change? You know, are we going to go to pay per prompt? Is that a possibility?
I think, let me just pick up a little bit of a comment there. I had a chance to be at Davos this year, and really sort of the key theme for the event was the evolution from agentic models and just AI agents to AI workforce. And really sort of looking at some of the more progressive companies were literally thinking about every time they're going to hire, they're looking at how much of this task can we actually implement and execute using agentic workforce? And using that as a mechanism to amplify and augment the existing workforce, right? So can you move faster? Can you execute at a much higher resolution? Can you find the signal in the noise for your customers, right? Those kinds of things. So I think we're in a fundamental shift where companies that are forward-looking are able to sort of make this switch and really start baking these opportunities in their roadmaps.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. And Pilar, coming back to yourself, could you share with us your thoughts on what some of the business models could be in terms of the Google portfolio? Pay per prompt, you know, AI as a usage-based interaction. You know, how do you think that might all pan out?
Well, I'm in research. I'm not in product,
yes.
so
Okay.
I don't get to say how. But I'd like to point out something that I think is worth thinking about. in all these years, when we've been working towards AI, towards these flexible interfaces of natural language, we're trying to make these interfaces better and better to adapt to ourselves. So now we've come to a point where you need a natural language prompt that is very well defined in order to get the model for you to do something. I believe that has to kind of transition to something that is a lot more like the way we talk every day. Because we've gone from a formal language as developers to natural language, which is great in terms of naturalness, and it's great in terms of accessibility for everybody, but it's not quite as precise as any of the programming languages that we have. So we had to come to a point where we're able to express ourselves in a way where the large language was able to understand without us having to go and specify every single detail. So my goal would be, if I say something that Miguel or you or anybody would understand, then have the model understand it without having to add additional details that any other human, specialized or not, would understand. And that will change everything, because it will not be only based on prompts. There are no prompts anymore. They're just requests, natural language requests.
Wow.
So how is that going to change the game altogether? Because we've been talking about optimizing to play a certain game. What if the game changes altogether and the rules of the game are no longer the same? So we had to keep our eyes open, because sometimes those games and the playing field are going to change altogether.
Wow. I mean, 4 years from now is called 4 years from now for a reason. You know, it's really looking into the future. And I think the next 4 years could be faster than the previous ones, to put it mildly. So, Pilar, you've just kind of laid that out there perfectly. Thank you. So let's look at what this means for the enterprise. And actually, I'd love to come to yourself first, Shahid, because I know you're based in the US, and it's a bit of a different market over there. How do you think that businesses are adapting to this new world where AI agents continually evolve and personalize the outputs of a business?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a little bit of a FOMO as well as a little bit of a greed factor happening, right? Because senior leadership in a lot of very established companies are like, there's a real fear factor in terms of being sort of either outshone. There's a new startup that's going to move faster, move market share. And I think there's a real opportunity to look at this from, let's look at where the opportunity is. So as far as what we've been doing at C10, our investment thesis is that some of the most dominant companies will get built at the intersection of applied AI and real deep sectoral expertise. So things like healthcare, fintech, energy, infrastructure, where you have applied AI opportunities, but you also need certain deep sectoral expertise. And so there's a real opportunity to, come in both from a startup lens and an investor lens and look at those intersects and see where you can make some transformative work happen. So I think it's an incredibly exciting time. And there was certainly a moment for myself. I was teaching this class at MIT Media Lab called AI for Impact, and about 3 years ago. And there was certainly this eureka moment where we, OpenAI released, and we were like, okay, we got to drop everything, what we're doing, not just teach, but help students and help entrepreneurs apply the knowledge in creating these opportunities. I think that's really sort of the most important opportunity here. It's like, how fast can you move? How can you build? How can you transform sectors? How can you have societal scale impact with this real convergence of technologies that's happening? It's not just AI, but it's really a bunch of other things that are making what's possible almost magical today. Yeah. Oh
yeah, exciting times for sure. That's great. So thank you for the US perspective. That's looking great. Okay, Miguel, I'm going to come over to your good self now. What's your perspective from the point of view of Europe, from the point of view of LATAM? What do you think is going to work in that perspective in terms of AI agents in the enterprise?
I have the feeling that there are still a lot of barriers for enterprise-wide adoption, right? I mean, of course, doing a POC here and there, it's easy. But if you want your whole organization to be using that, then compliance comes in, and then you need to really understand the costs at scale when everybody's using that, which is not totally clear. You need to avoid data to leave your internal servers, all these kind of things which are like the railways around the usage of AI in the enterprise, which need to be solved. I think in the US, corporates and companies are less risk averse, so they try things out and they will not get fired because of trying. Here in Europe, this is the idea that I'm gonna wait a bit and see what happens, and I'm only gonna do this if somebody else creates the framework for me. Is it Google? Is it Microsoft? Somebody else takes the risk, not myself, right? So
Yeah.
I think that means then a bit less of experimentation in Europe, but I have this idea that there could be leapfrogs, right? I mean, you could be using the existing technology to advance 5 to 10 years. I take the LATAM example, particularly on the banking space, right? I mean, almost, and the banking space and the cloud shift that happened a few years ago. I mean, almost every bank knew they had to move into the cloud and they had to go digital. Over the years, almost every bank now has an app and has a digital user experience. But there were somebody, like the Nubank guys in Brazil, that went mobile first and mobile only. And then they completely disrupted the banking market in LATAM, right? So I think that you will see now AI-first companies starting in LATAM and also in Europe. We're just not going to follow a step-by-step change, but they're going to completely disrupt the paradigm.
Wow. Okay, fabulous. This is great. So we got the US perspective, we got Europe and Latin America, and Pilar, you're sitting right in the middle. So I wonder, could I come to you for a bit of a global question? You know, in this area of the enterprise being prepared for a future of agentic AI, do you think things are moving quickly enough globally? Do you think the right steps are being taken now?
That depends.
Very good.
I think that things are moving very quickly, but they are not moving very quickly everywhere.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that there is a diversity of situations and contexts that make it harder in some areas than others, both in terms of industry, in terms of geography.
Yeah.
So from the European perspective, I think that we need to move a little faster. I think that we have an incredible amount of really capable people, extremely good universities, the ability to train, the ability to create, the ability to innovate, but for some reason we're not necessarily being as productive as we could be. And in a world globally where AI is helping and boosting, in the way I said before, I think it's more important than ever to have this core skills, capabilities, and potential really grow and explode. So I think that we have opportunity, we have the potential, we have the tools, we just need to be able to cook the right recipe for that, to make that happen.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
And there is, this reminds me of a report I read about 3 years ago from McKinsey, which basically said that the majority of the value capture in AI shift in enterprise and globally is largely going to get captured in China and the US. And so I think there's an opportunity here to change that narrative and really focus on innovation and execution and speed as well here in Europe. You have incredible talent, incredible, real core sectors that could be, transformed fundamentally in this next shift that's happening. So one of the reasons why it's great to be here is that we're looking at this as almost like creating these AI corridors. Can we connect what's happening in the US with this early stage innovation and research, but with hubs around the world that are actually primed for this shift? And I think Europe is certainly one of them. That's why we're here. We're looking at a few other hotspots, but I think it's an opportunity to really change that narrative and step into the opportunity.
I think it's very relevant that we talk a bit around this sentiment that we had in Europe over the last year or so. We were almost bullied into relevance by everybody saying, no, it's just US and China and we are out of the game. I absolutely believe that's not true, right? I think we do have the talent. What we need to do is to get out of all this regulation fragmentation that we have all across Europe, and we cannot export regulation. That's not a thing to export, right? We need to export innovation. So we need to really take out all these barriers among different countries in Europe, and of course massively invest in infrastructure, right? I mean, we cannot compete with the Americans or the Chinese if we are not investing massively in having more production scale chips and facilities here in Europe, because we have the talent. And I have to say, the European Commission really gets it around. I do think now there is this change also of sentiment and the politicians. We need to now bring this also back to the local level, that the nations understand that we need to unite much more than ever.
Great. I love this talk. Absolutely. I'm 100% on board with this. But let's kind of roll back a bit and go back to the billing, the kind of business models, etc. You know, of course, as you were saying earlier, Miguel, you're going to have new solutions where agents speak to agents, and it's really going to change the landscape. Where do you think the ethics and trust come into this, in terms of how can people have that trust in, you know, things they can't necessarily see or understand, and how do you think that's going to play out?
Imagine, right? I mean, without the human in the loop, then all the biases in the data or all the fake data are going to be, could be used by autonomous agents just to create, I don't know, a mishap, right? So I think that data governance and understanding which are authoritative data sources that can be trusted by everybody is going to be much more important than ever, right? So how can you use knowledge graphs? How can you use different sources like the PageRank that we had from Google times ago, right? But that for data that can be used within the organization and also outside, because it's going to be seamless, right? It's not going to be just a silo, but data is going to flow, the prompts are going to flow, the agents are going to flow from one place to the other. So I think much more important than ever is to understand which data talks to which data and if it's trustworthy or not.
Indeed, indeed. And Pilar, I am itching to get over to you on this question, because this is an area that you were a great commentator on and a pioneer in terms of the ethics of AI and data. Talk to us about what this means for the whole system. I mean, what would you say in terms of advice, in terms of what people should know about this overlap between AI and ethical data?
I think that governance is extremely important. Yeah. And I think that even if you're a small company, you need to have your own governance inside the company and make sure that you deal with data the right way, and you understand the legislation and you understand the constraints based on what kind of data, what is going to be used for, and so on. But I think that in the future world that Miguel was describing, where there are many agents talking to one another through APIs and have this orchestration of services like seamlessly going one way or another, I think there is also a scenario where you have your own trusted agent that negotiates with the world on your behalf. And that is the one that you can trust. And that is the one that will be savvy about what's out there, because the reality is that you cannot guarantee that everyone is doing the right thing or is dealing with the data in the right way, but you can have an enhanced version of you, your trusted agent, your trusted companion, that can actually learn to identify risks on your behalf, can negotiate certain things, and can do things for you. And then you can make sure that you can trust that one at least. I think that's a great point.
Outstanding. Yes, sign me up. Take my money already. Now, speaking of which, this is opening up an entire new landscape for enterprise, for individuals, for ecosystems, for collaboration. So I would like to kind of set this open question. I'm going to start with yourself first, Shahid. You know, what unexpected business benefits do we think we might see from things like AI-empowered agents, dynamic automation? Because this is a very rich new potential field of business, of revenues, but what kind of things should we be looking out for?
So if we're looking for surprises, I think there'll be plenty along the road, because it's almost impossible to predict over the long run or the medium run how things will play out. I think the near-term value and the opportunity is in things where you have industries or markets or products that ingest a lot of data, and you're trying to find the signal in the noise, right? So healthcare is a really good example where it's a very complex industry, it's heavily regulated. Fintech is another one. We see a lot of opportunity in energy and data centers. Can you build agentic models that create efficiencies at scale for large-scale deployment, hyperscalers, and so I think so those are some of the sectors where I feel like some really significant companies are going to get built. And also, I would say from a societal scale impact, probably I would say healthcare and bio. It's the convergence of applied AI across the whole value chain of bio and healthcare that I feel like it's going to really be transformative for society at large.
Fantastic.
So obviously, we're based in Boston. It's a big focus in healthcare. We're backing that as one of our core areas.
Oh, nice. Okay, watch this space, my friends. And Miguel, I'd love to come to yourself. What things do you think that people should be looking out for in this brave, new, exciting world?
It's hard to bet in a future in 10 years. We don't know what's going to happen in 10 days, right? So, but that's our job, so we have to do that. I fully concur with everything that Shahid said, and bringing that into LATAM, I have this idea that healthcare is so inaccessible for so many people because it's too expensive, it's hard. So I think that AI is going to lower the barrier of entry for good healthcare and for good clinicians for many people in countries where they have it not right now, and that's going to change the quality of living of so many people. So I think that's super exciting for me.
Fantastic, great. And last question, last word to yourself, Pilar. How do you think, speaking about the future, how can we avoid a world of stratification where we have the AI haves and the AI have-nots? Is there any closing thoughts?
I think that what's really important is to make technology and the knowledge of how to use that technology safely available to everyone. So those who are building technology like ourselves have the responsibility to make it safe and available, democratizing access, and I think that a lot of the companies like Google are doing a good job there. But then there is the personal responsibility. You can only make things available, you cannot make people use them or use them right. So it also takes a little bit of effort to basically hold oneself accountable. The world is changing. AI is here to stay, and there is no stopping it. So it's the time to embrace it. It's the time to educate oneself. It's the time to decide what role you want to play in this new world that's coming. And hopefully, you'll be as a user, as a developer, as a thinker, as a philosopher, as a scientist, who knows, but play a role. Have a clarity in what role that's going to be.
Well said. Okay, my friends, the place is 4 years from now, but the time to get on board is right now. Please join me in showing your appreciation for our wonderful power trio. Give it up for Miguel, Pilar, and Shahid. Thank you.
Thank you.